Good evening, everybody. This is Tim from the sportmanagementeducator.com, and I'm here with Dave Salter, author of the book Final Four Leadership. How you doing tonight, Dave?
I'm doing great, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for coming on out. Why don't you tell us about the book and how it came about?
Sure. About 2 years ago was beginning the college search process with my oldest daughter, and as I usually do when I'm trying to find information, went to Borders to try to find a book or two for her about some successful women and/or successful female leaders, and didn't find anything to my liking. There were very few choices to select from, so I decided to write it myself, and had a difficult time for a little while trying to identify the subjects that we were going to write about, but ended up doing that, and I came out with a pretty neat project.
And what did you learn from interviewing these coaches?
Well, I think the first thing that I learned, which maybe I knew intuitively, but is that there is a definite difference between leading women and leading men. Some people might say that's chauvinistic or whatever, but there's just some definite differences between the way these women coaches treat their players, the way they interact with their colleagues, than you or I might see with a male football coach or a male basketball coach. So that was number one. And the way that dovetailed then is that I learned that a lot of the secrets that these women have in how they lead their young ladies, we can apply to what we do in everyday life, whether we're in business, law, education, whatever our profession is. We can use these to be more effective leaders.
That's a really good point. I know you and I have some similar backgrounds, and leading women sometimes is very difficult, especially growing up in households with boys, right, and dealing with men all the time. So I think this book could help a number of different people. What do you think the average person would learn from this book?
Well, I go back to a story that a business colleague of mine tells about Henry Ford when he built the Model T. Because people have asked me, well, what am I going to learn from 8 women's basketball coaches? And I go back to this story again about Henry Ford and the Model T. And when he built the Model T, there were over 2,000 other backyard mechanics that were building cars. So Henry Ford's thinking, how am I going to build this car more efficiently, quicker, get it to market faster? Ends up going to a Chicago meatpacking plant where he discovers the rudimentary beginnings of the assembly line. A cow would come into the plant, and there were butchers set up in a line, and instead of one butcher disassembling the entire cow, each butcher was responsible for one specific area, and it went down the line until the cow was butchered and packaged and ready to go. And so he got the idea to build his car that I could do my car this way. I can get a bunch of mechanics in a line, and each one of them can do a different part. So Henry Ford learned from a totally different business, meatpacking and automobiles. Learned how to create the assembly line so he could produce his car. So I tell people that story because it's very similar to these women's basketball coaches. We can take the things that I learn and talk about in the book, and we can apply them to everyday life regardless of the position that we're in. Again, whether you're an educator, whether you're in business, a doctor, whatever the case might be, if you manage a group of people, especially if you're a manager of a group of women, I think this would be really helpful. It's also helpful to men too, because guys, I think for many years we've been brought up to lead in one specific way, and I think that's one of the other things I learned is that there's different types of leadership. And different types of leadership can be effective. There isn't just one way to be a good leader.
Very good. Who are the coaches that you interviewed, and how did you go about choosing them?
That's a great question, because I originally had a big laundry list of coaches that I wanted to interview, and I finally got it down to a manageable list of about 30, and I still knew that that was too many to do in the book, and I thought 10 would be a good number, somewhere around 10, and I finally came up with the criteria that they had to have led their team to at least one Final Four. I thought that would be a sort of a good measuring stick. And that gave me a list of 10, and the 8 coaches that participated in the project were Sylvia Hatchell at North Carolina, Tara Vanderveer at Stanford, Muffin McGraw at Notre Dame, Sherry Cole out at Oklahoma, Brenda Fries at Maryland, Kim Mulkey at Baylor, Gail Guest, of course, who used to be at Duke's, now at Texas, and then Jody Conrad, who's retired, is the second winningest women's coach of all time, ended her career with 900 victories exactly, and retired a couple years ago, and then Gail Guest, of course, took her spot. So a neat mix of experience and geography and age and whatnot, and I thought that was, it blended well with the book because they all came from different circumstances and different situations, and where they came from really contributes to how they lead their teams.
Yeah, that's a fantastic list of coaches, and you can tell they all bring different things to the table.
Absolutely.
One of the great aspects about the book is a portion of the proceeds go to the K-Yao Cancer Fund. Why don't you talk about that a little bit and how that came about and what that actually means to you?
Sure. I really felt strongly to try to give something back to the coaches because they had given me so much time. They, not only our in-person interviews, countless hours just setting up interviews and getting information from them. They all invited me back to come and observe their practices and games, and really gave a lot of their time to me. Interviewed a lot of their colleagues, assistant coaches, athletic directors, people they've worked with over the years. So I just really, when you write a book like this, it's a team effort. It's not just me. There's a lot of other ingredients you need to make this a success. So I felt strong, and I didn't know how to go about doing that. I said, I'm not a wealthy person, so I said I can't make a donation to each one of their scholarship funds or something like that. I don't have the resources to do that. And at the same time, sort of as a backdrop, my wife's a cancer survivor for 3 years now. My sister's a cancer survivor. Each of my 3 daughters, over the last 3 years, has watched a classmate bury a parent who's died from cancer. We have a really good friend right now who's been for about a year now battling both breast and ovarian cancer. She's had a bunch of treatments and surgeries, and she's been really inspirational to me because I've had a sort of a tough year the last year professionally, and every time I started to feel bad about my situation, woe is me. I just thought about Kathy, our friend, who's been just unbelievable spirit to fight through this for her family. She has 3 kids. I coached one of her daughters in youth basketball for a few years, and just a great family. So with sort of that also, as a backdrop, when Kay Yao passed away, she was the head coach at North Carolina State for 20 some odd years. Had been battling breast cancer since I think 1987. Went into remission, came back, remission. She, again, another person is just battling, and she passed away last season, I think in January, February, in the middle of the season. And I was watching that weekend. Her team came out, and her assistant coach, coached the team, and everybody had pink ribbons, and I was like, that's it. Light bulb sort of went off. The Women's Basketball Coaches Association started the K Yao WBCA Cancer Fund in honor of Coach Yao. And the neat thing about that is they give out research grants to scientists and doctors who are specifically searching for cures to women's cancers. So they're affiliated with the V Foundation after Jim Belvano. Just a really neat organization. So I thought that would be a neat way to recognize the coaches that participated in the project, and at the same time, the personal tie-in for me with the family and friends that have been impacted the last few years with cancer. I just thought it was a really neat tie-in. So we're going to donate a portion of the proceeds from the book to the K-Yow Fund, and I haven't told anybody a number. I have a crazy number in my head that I'd really like to donate, but I'm going to have to sell a lot of books.
Well, to sell a lot of books, people need to know where to buy it. So how can people get the book?
They can go to my website, www.davidfsalter.com, and they can buy the book and check out my blog about leadership, and also writing a little bit about fathers and daughters. You and I have some experiences there.
Yes, we do.
So that's a neat sideline for me as well.
Dave, thank you very much for your time. I wish you the best, and hopefully we can sell a lot of books.
Thanks again, Tim. I appreciate it.
All right. Everybody take care. This is Tim from sportmanagementeducator.com.